Welcome back to the second lesson in part 3. Now, every node in our workflow runs once. One input, one execution, and one output. But what if the input is not a single value? What if it is a list? For example, a list of products, a list of questions, and a list of files. So running this workflow once is no longer enough. This is where the iteration node comes in. Okay, now I will tell you something about iteration nodes. So you can open the iteration nodes by this. Under the logic, you have an iteration node. So after you click the iteration node, you'll see several items, several blanket you should fill in. Input, output, parallel mode, arrow response method, and flatten output. Okay, so before we see it, let me first conclude what the iteration node can do. For example, when you have several articles, we say we have 10 articles in total, article 1, 2, and 3. And when our goal is to analyze each article, okay, to get some information from each article, and then we can use the iteration node. Okay, so remember the input of the iteration node should be a list, or we say array. Okay, and when you want to analyze each item in the array, you can use iteration nodes. That easy to understand, right? And input, okay, just what comes before, it is an array, and output also should be an array. And parallel modes, okay, usually we will turn on this because for parallel mode, it means to process the items in the list at the same time. For example, we have 10 articles and we want to do the same processing steps for each article, then we can open the parallel mode. Okay, but if the item in a list, their structure is different. For example, this one is article, and this one is not the article, it's something different, then you cannot open or turn on this parallel mode. Okay, and arrow response method, so these three things easy to understand. Terminate means stop, continue on arrow, just jump this arrow things and go to the next iteration. Remove abnormal output. Okay, it just means removes the abnormal things. Okay, and flatten output. Flattened output means, you see, when enabled, if all iteration outputs are arrays, there will be flattened into a single array. When disabled, the outputs will maintain a nested array structures. So what does it mean? For example, here we have 10 articles. And if we turn on this, the output should be an array. Okay? But if we turn off this, the output will be a list of list, or we say the array of array. Okay, so that is a different. Let me just give you an example of what we have. Yeah, just this example. So you will see a very large iteration node here. So in this iteration node, the goal is to analyze each video title one by one, not just a single example. So now I told you, the input of the iteration should be an array. And in this array, it have 25 video titles. Okay, we have 25 video titles as inputs. And as you can see, inside the iteration nodes, we can add different kind of nodes, such as this one is a code node. Okay, and I will tell you something about it in the next lecture. And this is the title pattern extractor, is an LM node. So you see, for each title, we can use code node, LM node, or some other things to analyze this title. Okay, and finally, after the iteration node, we will have a structured array. Okay, structured array. So we have 25 titles in, and we have 25 title patterns out. Because this is to conclude title patterns. So for the output, we have 25 patterns out. And these 25 patterns also an array. Okay? So now this is a little bit complex example for you, but I hope that you understand the main definition for the iteration node. It is just to analyze each item in a list. Okay, each item in a list. And also, if you want to know some details about iteration node, you can open our document, official document. You'll see some details, processing mode, or we say the arrow handling, how does it handle the arrows, and also what it can connect with inside the iteration node. Okay, they are all good examples. You can read it after the video. In this lesson, we learn how the iteration node allows the workflow to process lists in a clean and scalable way. Instead of duplicating logic for each item, we define the process once and apply it to every element in the collection. This keeps the workflow structured and predictable, especially when dealing with batch data. But it's important to remember that iteration only repeats logic, it doesn't change it. If the processing inside each step needs custom transformation, calculations, or more precise control over data structures, then repetition alone is not enough. Just like what you see in our examples, we will connect a title cleaner in the iteration node. That is a code node. So you will see that the code node becomes very useful inside the iteration node. And in the next lesson, we will see how the small pieces of code can extend your workflow's flexibilities beyond what visual nodes can express. I will see you in the next video.